The sitting is resumed. Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to extend to my colleagues, the government, my brothers and sisters in this parliamentary session, my deep appreciation, at least to be in the company of those who I see here with me today, and that the general public has made a decision, and I always rest my confidence in the broad masses of Barbados when fundamental decisions are made like this. So regardless of who intellectualize all these matters, the mechanism which we have for determining who should be and who should not be, the mechanism had worked most efficiently in the last general election. So we'll have a lot of debate, sir. But I am more concerned, sir, with when this party reached the stage, the progressive stage of becoming a republic, I am concerned in seeing creative ideas and a reflection on the traditional lines of many of the policy guidelines on different aspects of public issues. Sir, today we speak about housing, and I'm not going to be critical of housing because I am fully aware that the minister is not present. But he did indicate to all of us that his intention is to bring quantitatively a housing policy that will stretch way beyond anything that we've ever seen before. And I'm sorry that he isn't here to participate in this debate, because sometimes I believe that the concept of housing is too stereotyped, the concept of land distribution is too stereotyped, and we need to expand the debate on housing, at least to respond to what the majority of Barbadians are talking about. When I talk with the majority of Barbadians, I am not really just generalizing, but there's the number of categories of Barbadians, ex-prisoners, ex-inmates of the mental, unemployed young men, especially in the middle of this crisis. They all work away, the family feeling additional pressure, they add to the numbers, so men turn into building something in order to survive in the circumstances. I am saying that these indicators beg for a more expansive discussion on the issue of land and on the issue of homelessness. The homeless is not only Ninja Man. The whole homeless is a large percentage of the Barbadian population, not deriving from anything that this government has done, but deriving from our experiences in the history in which we I don't even know if say we inherit, the history in which we were coerced into becoming part of. I really figure that by now, regardless of what the particular subject is, as long as it gives us a relevant link to wider a wider generalized debate on housing policy, we are at a point immediately in a Republican, at a time when we become a republic, we are at a point now that we should look back on all of these traditions and enter into a debate that is more universal than anything that we have ever had before on public issues, especially if we're going to be running a theme through our, at this stage, through our entire development of knowing who we are. The housing policy has just emerged over the years. The land policy has just emerged over the years, and we have not done much to at least utilize land for specific purposes. We have not gathered the kind of enthusiasm and the inspiration that would enter into other aspects of landlessness and homelessness, even within individual communities across Barbados. And as I say, one of the most important things that anchor a person's life is being a landowner. Being a landowner, nobody don't like to go to sleep at night, and we don't know what the landlord can do tomorrow morning, even when you're up to date with your land rent, and you've been living on the land for 30 years, all your children are now mature children and everything, and the landlord comes out of boarding just because he's not satisfied with something that you did, or just because he's just a miserable landlord and tell you got to leave the land. So I am begging, and I believe I am a mirror of what is happening out there on the ground, all of us in our individual constituencies, and I hope the new minister would hear us, even though he's not present. Out there in our constituencies, when we see people on the day, on that specific day that we meet people, or the other days of the week, most of the time it is unemployment, and they need a house, and they love to be able to talk about owning a house, but initially to start off with renting a unit or so on. So I figure that the land policy is short-changed at this particular time, and I just want to send that signal that is going to be a very major debate. So apart from policy, it is about execution of policy, and the manner in which we select land sometimes for housing, and how some constituencies find it difficult to get land space. They don't have the land space in the specific constituencies, and therefore, while the pressure, the demands are coming from a specific location, there's no land space in that area that would allow us to keep the people within the community into an area that they react in, that they interact in, but also into an area that their families and everything live for a considerable time. And because of the way in which the policy goes, it scatters the family all across Barbados. And I think that is an issue that we need to pay some attention to. And that is why, as I addressed the previous minister, that is why on the last occasion, I would say we have to use land space for housing units, and use it in the very optimum manner, that if we have 6,000 square feet, we can probably get a number of units, 10,000 square feet, whatever it is, we can get a number of units by not spreading and trying to utilize the width of the land space, but at least going vertically with the construction of the housing. So I hope that, I don't want to take it outside the perimeters of what I discussed prior at another meeting. So therefore I will not go any further, but I am fired by the concerns of the small people across Barbados, and we have to find ways of addressing these issues. I can link it to other issues as well within my constituencies, within the speaker's constituencies, within the Bay Land. Now the Bay Land, for example, the people of the Bay Land have been crying out for a considerable time for the subdivision of lands across the Bay Land. People died and never got an opportunity, although they were offering and making an effort to rent those lands. And the only opportunity I'm going to have to be able to speak to you and speak to the minister that is coming in is if I come on the floor of the House, so I will have to take up my private phone, have a chat, which I might not be fired up in the same manner as if I come to the House of Assembly. So when I come here, I'm not critical of any personality. I'm critical of an archaic approach to how we respond, and a stereotype that occupies the constructs in the brain about what house it is supposed to be, and what is important about land in a specific area, and what is not so important because a man can find a box or sleep on it, a tunnel during the night and survive for the next 5 or 6 years. That is complementary to, unfortunately, our resilience as human beings. But sir, I am more concerned today about. I've made a visit yesterday morning, and the one visit I made yesterday was to Frank Worrell's house, Sir Frank Worrell's house in Bank Hall. I think that is to the eastern side of Empire playing field. And I know that we came in here a number of times before, and we suggested, not just in this government, previous governments, and we suggested that there's no way that historic landmark and the significance of Frank Worrell to Barbados, that property should be there. With the government not making an intervention and trying to help with the upkeep of the property, or the government not having some arrangement with the family so that we can provide alternative accommodation for them, and using that house and its land space for the purpose of developing some form of an auditorium that school children can go there and see what cricket had been like, see the whole evolution of cricket from the 1950s, see the breakthrough against the British and see the breakthrough against the Australians, which gave a lot of pride and confidence to our people from in the 1950s. Frank Worrell is too much of a significant individual for us to be putting a plaque on that house by the National Trust. It is not even there. When I went there yesterday, it's not even there anymore. Because it means nothing to the family, and it means nothing to Barbadians. There are too many houses across Barbados, properties where the National Trust puts up this plaque, and after that, nothing happens. The houses are unpainted, in a state of disrepair, right? And these are historic locations which house some of the most distinguished and remarkable individuals that come out of grassroots societies across Barbados. I know sometimes people want to put this debate exclusively on the culture. There are some who have this view of what is logical and what is appropriate, and some believe that a discussion like this should be on culture or community development. I believe that these disciplines, there's a correlation between these disciplines, and that a serious discussion needs to be entered into, regardless if it is on culture or if it is on community development, if it is on community tourism. It is a discussion that we need to have. It is one of the basic necessities of life: ownership of property, land, and housing. You can't talk about housing without talking about land, because you can't build a house in the air. So nobody can tell me that, no, this is about housing, this is not about housing. It's like asking me, especially asking people in the school setting years ago, to put up what we call a blackboard, but you ain't talking about chalk. Or talking about a pen, but you ain't got an ink, a fountain pen, right? So whenever we're talking about land, I'm not talking about land just for industrial purposes and for the collection of rents and things of that nature and making the system so efficient that we can get some rent from it. I'm saying that this is a debate that starves the working class people of understanding, a clear understanding of what it is that we're doing. I really would like to just put the initial discussion up front in relation to what will come in the future, especially out of the office that I am responsible for, which is reparation and economic enfranchisement. You will be hearing some discussions on that property that is owned by the Worrell family in Bank Hall. And I'm sure that my friend from St. Michael's West, who was the parliamentary representative, even without having a discussion with him, I'm sure that he would be in full agreement with me that something ought to be done on that location. Frank Worrell is the first West Indian cricketer that in fact is the first captain of the West Indies cricket team. And you must always remember the series in England, and you must remember the series in Australia. Mr. Speaker, you might feel that I know nothing about cricket, but many people think so. But I really want to see something done. Cricket is so significant to the Barbadian. Look, Jamaica might have the music, Trinidad may have footballers and music as well, but Barbados was always in the forefront of West Indian cricket. West Indian cricket is like a weapon against an enemy. The militancy of the fast bowlers in the Caribbean, which is something that is still very much part of our culture. You have to answer, say, what was responsible for the pace of Gilchrist, what was responsible for the pace of West Hall, all of these people. What was responsible for the genius of Frank Worrell, the grace, the manner in which he played cricket as though it was a musical instrument in his hands. The way he glided. And the Honourable member of St. James South? Central. I don't know if you know anything about a late cut off flicking. Huh? You know what he says? But these are men that were not only cricketers, these men are artists. These men are artists. These men, we need to etch the name of these men, especially in communities where there's a sense of enemy in those communities where nobody seems to believe that there's any opportunity in life. These men broke through in the 1950s. And I said in here before, when Frank Worrell exhibited the skills, and when Frank Worrell became the first captain of the West Indies cricket team, Eric Williams said, a victory for Worrell and the West Indies is a victory for the PNM. You have heard me say that in here before. It meant so much to our people. We cannot allow that house, and you cannot allow that family to remain in the state that they're in, and we can put it to useful purpose. I saw in Scotland, in Edinburgh, Scotland, I saw a small auditorium, couldn't hold more than 50, but students and visitors would go there just to see birds migrate from Scotland. Paid money and went in. Obviously, you have other attractions there. What is wrong with having something that could have the capacity to have enough land, about 75 persons going there, and schools carrying children there, and we can look at the old material, the old recordings, video recordings from the 1950s, and see what it is that these men had that we don't have now. And the same thing goes for Sir Gary Sobers, his home in the Bayland. It should never be in that state. This government, that is a Republican form of government, have cut ties with the influences of colonialism. I believe we should now have a vision where we have these important landmarks of outstanding Barbadians in the heart of the community. People drive through there, and young men and women born in the area don't know that Sir Gary Sobers lived there, grew up there, and played cricket on the Bay Pasture. These young men out there don't know that Sir Gary Sobers' brother lives there and is still very much alive. There's nothing there to mark the house. And then the man is a national hero. Well, these are significant issues. I didn't really want to stretch the debate because it can go a lot further than that for me, because I know what these men mean to me. And I believe that there are many others who subconsciously, these men would have inspired their lives, but they don't, or they might not, as I said, subconsciously, or cautiously, right? But these men did what they did for the Caribbean can never be repeated in modern times. It was a breakthrough. It was a breakthrough against Britain. We can beat them in a war, but we played them at that level and showed them that we had superior endowments. They can only be superior endowments in the creativity in which we showed at that specific time. Sir, I don't know how long I have to speak, but I want to turn my attention, it might be a little hoppy, but I want to turn my attention to the housing policy as it relates to some units that are being constructed in Hackett Hall, between Hackett Hall 2 and Barker's Road. I understand how eager it was for us to get rolling, but all the indicators are coming true that we have not been rolling. The revolutions are relatively slow, the rotations are relatively slow. And the housing policy, in my view, is dragging along. I don't believe it's at the level of ministerial responsibility. I don't know if it's at the level of that unit core that is part of the bureaucracy of the land. Because I know of issues related to lands all in my area and the tardy conversations that has stretched almost over my entire stay as parliamentary representative of St. Michael's East, and that is over 20 years. These people sometimes talk to you, and the excuses that they give you is totally contrary to what is happening at the ministerial level. You have a clear vision of what you want to see, and you believe all that they're responsible for is the means of taking you there. And although you have a discussion on this specific matter at the top of the policymakers, then the issue is never addressed even in your lifetime. I don't have the intention of leaving in here on a number of issues until a number of issues are addressed. And if I'm here as long as the Buchanan, as long as the people say, go back to Parliament, I will come back. If they do it, well, I will have to stay outside. But I would love to know that within this 5-year term, which the people in St. Michael's East has given me against all the predictions, both internal and external, right? And it gave me with a relatively good victory, although I don't have the cash in my pocket to do things that other people might do. I don't know who did what or who did not, right? But I need to be able to say it at some point in time that these are the things that I said I will do for you, and I would like to do them. That housing policy in Hackett Hall, that housing program in Hackett Hall, I don't know if it is an example of what is happening all across, because I was very concerned about what the Polytechnic was doing, what the Vocational Training Board was doing. How comes all of these masons and carpenters were coming to me, and these institutions were producing people who were unworthy of being called whatever they are called? That the view that was coming across is that these men and women are incapable of producing a number of houses within a given period of time. Consequently, we went to the Chinese. So I was of the opinion that I would get these things from China tomorrow. Tomorrow passed, the other day passed, months passed, and weeks passed. I need to have an excuse that I can say to the constituents in St. Michael's East. And I don't know who else would like to say these things, but I believe that they want to say these things too. I am not being critical of what the minister has done today by sending this bill, this resolution to Parliament. I am not critical. I am absolutely supportive of what is happening on this South Coast. But all I'm asking, that inland, where all of us, especially in urban Barbados, where land space is limited, we have a unique kind of housing program. Not only, as I said, not only that we don't spread everything horizontally, but we go vertically on these issues. But in addition to that, I also need to see a level of expediency in the delivery of the actual services. You have got people coming to you immediately after a hurricane. You run out the house during the strong winds, and these people give them hope. Some of them went to sleep in schools, some of them sleep at other people's houses. People coming back to you and tell you, look, I never promised you for this body to live in my house for the balance of the life. What is happening? It might not be openly or overtly expressed even during a general election. But some of these public issues featured in the minds of poor people very much in the last general election. Not only the displacement from COVID, but the fact that in probably just in an area with 200 or 300 meters, you might find 3 or 4 houses that were damaged severely in the hurricane, and really felt that the parliamentary representative, to be truthful, I don't support, and I'm going to be speaking very frankly, regardless of who get vexed with me. I don't like this idea where sometimes public officers, the bureaucrats, get the feeling that they have greater authority over trying to help the people who elected you to represent the interest. We've been elected to represent their interest. And sometimes when I go on an issue like this, I say, but, sir, the problem here is that what's the place name about the emergency, this hurricane thing? These are the DM. The DM is responsible for submitting the names, and we check back. We must check back with the DM and the parliamentary representative. It makes no sense. It makes no sense if it comes from God. It is not right. Because we have to then take the licks in the communities for not getting this thing delivered to the people who voted for us. And our political survival stands with the very people that we are now telling them, man, I ain't got to say. So I need to see greater delivery. Greater delivery not only at the level of the minister directly, but the ministry and the boards and the staff. Not filibustering, keeping a lot of meetings, and people still living in those horrible circumstances. I saw something, sir, I just glanced, and I believe it's right. I just glanced this morning, I saw something in one of our public newspapers, which I don't have the document here to share with you, but I believe you would read it too. These are the realities. But we know what to ask people nearly a year or so after Elsa. You could put up somebody for me. I went through all of that. And I have to go through it again. This is another storm. They had the first talk. They have Elsa phase 1, and got Elsa phase 2. So all I'm asking is that based on these simple suggestions, I'm asking that at some time we have some kind of housing policy discussion here, that the people who are waiting on the lands and the houses at Barkers and Haggett Hall will be very clear on how much houses will be available to me as parliamentary representative, or because I don't see the logic, and I go into people and talk about how clustered these areas are. How many people living in one house? How the houses choke up, and if a fire occur or the ambulance want to get in, they can't get in. And then some minister of housing or somebody who is at the optimum point says, no, give that house to so-and-so, get that house to so-and-so. That is inviting a war. You're inviting a war. We want to be very clear on if X amount of houses are constructed in a specific area with a general understanding that is for the people of the area. We are not into any absolutism, but what we want to know is that a percentage of those units will be given to the parliamentary representative. Clear on that. I have had this war already in this House of Assembly. I don't want to get in it again, especially with some of my best friends. I want to be very clear that if we have 100 units, the parliamentary representative should have some say. This false view of separations of power and execution and all these kind of things, which we know is only theoretical, and which we know you take the autonomy out of the hands of the MP sometimes, but you got an individual within the particular office of government that won't pretend that he is the man with muscle, and he wants to flex or she wants to flex authority over parliamentarians. You go to government offices and ordinary workers that beg, went to, apart from going to service commission, ordinary workers that beg for work, and you believe that they deserve it, based on a few CXCs, want to treat an MP as less than a human being. Because you don't offend them, you extend all the required courtesies and they still get treated bad because it is a strange way of people feeling sweet about themselves. And I hope that in the new republic, nobody don't want to be a dictator. Nobody don't want to be accused of anything. Even there might be some new fabrication of what you call a government who wins 30 seats twice, right? There might be some new way of people describing that. They might not say it's totalitarian, but they might find some way of finding some new term that they feel synonymous with some negative feature of government. All I'm asking, sir, is that I hope that I've titillated the minds, especially of the former minister and the present minister, of the need for us not to have always have a top-down approach to government policy. But if it is top-down, when it comes down and it comes here, I'm going to speak my mind without any reservations whatsoever. Sir, I fully support this resolution, and I just send those simple messages, hoping that it will contribute to the government formulating a new policy, and especially in a well, not post-Republican, but in a government that who holds Republican status. Thank you, sir.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I first would need to, because I've been raised to be grateful, to thank the people of St. Peter for again expressing confidence in me to come to this place to represent them and to share with the Honourable Chamber and to share with the country what their views are on the matters that we discuss and debate in this Honourable Chamber. I am grateful for their support, and I say through you, Mr. Speaker, to them that I do not presume on that support. I do not take it for granted. I know they expect me to continue to represent their interests in this place. Today we are debating, discussing the matter of the vesting of the property as described by the Honourable Member for Christchurch West. That land in the area of Worthing, not very far from this place where we meet today. And I want to speak very briefly, but within the context of a reality that faces us as a country, and that is we see among our people an increasing tendency to entrepreneurship, wanting to own, establish, own, manage their own businesses, their own ventures. We also see a development which is referred to as the gig economy, where many persons no longer have that feeling that they would want to work for any single employer for 30 years and then go home with a lounge chair, maybe a TV, sometimes a watch, but would prefer to sell their services to particular purchasers for periods of time and then move on. And whenever I speak about the gig economy, I'm reminded of some good counsel that I got from the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central on how that economic activity should be viewed. But I want to locate my comments on this resolution within that context: entrepreneurship, the move to the gig economy, the feeling, particularly among younger people, that they would want to be craftsmen of their fate in a more real way than those of us who maybe were around independence or just after independence talk about being craftspersons of our fate. Now, the south coast of Barbados has been interesting. I spent most of my life in the tourism industry, about half of my life, and almost all of my working life. And the development of the industry on the south coast has been, for me, someone who almost naturally likes history, almost an object lesson. There were people living on this coast, so from Hastings up through Worthing, Rockley up through Worthing. And many of those persons in the 1950s, late 1950s, early 1960s, particularly at the time when this party, in a previous iteration, led by the now Right Excellent Sir Grantley Herbert Adams, and the Hotel Aids Act of 1958, pursuant to the passing of that piece of legislation in the House of Assembly at the time, landowners on this coast, including in the area that we are referring to in this resolution, saw an economic opportunity. And what happened over the years is that landowners in that corridor along Highway 7 made some decisions as to how they would twin their living and their earning. And many of them decided that they would build on an apartment to their house to rent to visitors to the island. Some of them actually moved out of the area and decided that they would convert their residences to apartments. In those days, they would put in a stove and a little fridge, and we used to call them self-contained apartments. And that is how the tourism industry on the accommodation side had its genesis, particularly on this South Coast corridor, Hastings, Rockley, Worthing. And that, Mr. Speaker, I share because it speaks, in my mind, to vision. While it does speak to vision based on people who had means, so they had the ability to do what they did because they had the land, but I'm using that as an object lesson to say to us that development can be organic. Development can take place based on opportunities that present themselves. And I strongly agree with the Honourable Member for St. Michael East, both what he said today and some things he said in the past. It is the responsibility of those who have been elected to lead to help in providing those opportunities. And that is the reason why I began by indicating that many of those opportunities arose out of legislation passed in this honorable chamber in 1958, the Hotel AIDS Act. And sometimes there's a feeling that the general public may not understand the significance of what we do in this place. And I think it is always important to remind all of us that what we do here impacts people, impacts their views on life, impacts opportunities that may present themselves, and impacts the way that they're able to take advantage of the opportunities. And I say take advantage, meaning that they grab hold of the opportunities and use them for their own development, for the development of their relatives, their families, and ultimately for the development of their societies and their countries. Legislation passed in this place and resolutions passed in this place allow for an orderly development. So there's the provision of opportunities that people can use, and we have evidence of it. I spent quite a bit of my working life on this course as well, including at a property right next door to the one being debated today, that area, that segment of property in Worthing. And I can say to you that in this location, in these locations, there are tremendous opportunities. And it is for government, including this government that I have the privilege to be a part of, to fashion legislation, resolutions that contribute both to providing opportunities, but also that lend themselves to the orderly development of people and of enterprise in this country. Now, most of the activity on this course is commercial. Some of it, almost all of it, tourism related. Some of it accommodation, but much of it non-accommodation, commercial activity, restaurants, shops, craft, and various other types of business. And as I think about this and contribute to this debate, I'm reminded of what I consider maybe in the last government, that is the government that ended its tenure at the end of last year, one of the most significant pieces of legislation, that vending bill piloted by the Honourable Member for St. James Central. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have, while recognizing that there are people who came along inheriting property or inheriting access to property which they have developed and which a government has a responsibility to help as well, we also have to be mindful, and maybe even more so, of persons who did not have that leg up, who did not come along inheriting, seeing their parents on a piece of land in Worthing conducting business. And a government like ours, a democratic socialist government, a government that believes that the state has a role to play in the development of a country and its people, we have, building on that vending legislation, to develop a cadre of entrepreneurs in this country who understand, not just based on the legislation, but based on the cultural context that we are to create. They understand that their economic activity is as important, is as legitimate, and is viewed in a similar manner to the kind of activity you will find being conducted by those who had the hand up, or those who came along inheriting access to property and to business. In the St. Peter context, we have a vending area, but before I say that, I am very attached to vending and commercial activity for a number of reasons. I grew up in a shop, so I know about bread paper, I know about lard oil by the pint, and cheese by the ounce. I know about 2-pound paper bags and 4-pound paper bags. I also grew up in St. Peter, where in Speightstown, the character of the town was, and still is, determined by the vending activity that takes place in the town. The hawkers who operate from Speightstown, who I encourage all of us, even if you don't live in St. Peter, to support. The character of the endeavor is one that must be supported and can be facilitated. We have in the same Speightstown a vending area at the traffic lights at the junction of the Sir Kenneth, the Kenneth Husbands Highway and Church Street. A vending area that is in need of attention. And we've had discussions with the Ministry of Agriculture, which is the ministry responsible for that vending area, and they have provided us with plans that will lend to the modernizing of the area. And I repeat that those things are important because the vendor in Speightstown by the bus stand must feel that his or her economic activity is on par with Unicomer in Bridgetown, the Sands in Worthing, Cape Shepherd, wherever it is, because the names keep changing. The vendor in St. Peter must understand that their choice of economic activity has the same level of validity. That will come with respect. And I'm happy that the word respect, I was going in that direction because it has to go beyond the legislation. Legislation, and the former Honourable Member for St. George North is now legendary for saying you can't legislate a culture. The culture has to come from how each of us interacts with persons involved in various kinds of economic activity. It is the respect that we accord to those persons who did not inherit anything, who may not have been like me, grew up in a shop, who decided they needed to earn some money. We have the kind of respect that we demonstrate to them is what will allow them and the society around us to understand that they are engaging in legitimate activity. I believe that this government has an excellent springboard, that vending legislation, from which to move forward to legitimize, not in a legalistic way, but legitimize in a cultural way, the activity of our smaller business people. Those who I described on the South Coast in the 50s and the 60s started small. Some of those, I'm not talking about small as in with a stall, but I'm talking about small as in with a house spot, and maybe a house with 2 or 3 bedrooms. Many of those 2 or 3 bedroom houses became, and I was part of a company, the Honourable Member for St. James Central remembers it. He, I almost said benefited, but he was attorney in a transaction where a house that was a 3-bedroom house became a hotel of 48 or 49 rooms. That kind of development, though maybe not by people who look like us, I believe that we have to take object lessons from what happens around us. That says to me that with the right facilitation and with the right cultural context, a business person in any sphere of activity can go from micro to small, can move from small to medium, can move from medium to large. And we have to inculcate in our people that because you start micro, because you start with a stall, does not mean that 30 years on, you still have to be with the stall. If the stall is what you like, then that is fine. But a person must be able to know that they can develop. There must be, right. If you like stalls, you can end up with stalls in a whole number of places across the country. And you can manage them just like Mr. Tudor did with the shops back in the day. You can establish them wherever you want to establish them. Our people must understand that development is possible. And they must be assured that government will use the means at government's disposal to assist them in moving forward. I am happy to be part of a government that has done things like establishing trust loans. Trust loans. Even the name makes me emotional. Because as I said, I grew up in a shop. I know about people trusting. And to establish trust loans tells me, and that is one of the reasons why I'm proud to be part of this government and the party that forms the government. It tells me that we understand our culture and the importance of connecting to the cultural heritage. But we've established trust loans. The Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central did tremendous work in starting to move organizations like Enterprise Growth Fund into the modern era. You know, we've established the vending bill. This government understands development. And the resolution that we debate this morning has within it, in terms of its history and its development, some lessons that will say to us, we can develop, and we can develop in an orderly manner. We also have a vending area in Six Men's in St. Peter. And we are in the process now, working with Barbados Tourism Investment, Inc., of transforming that vending area. Again, because government has a role. Government has a role and a responsibility, beyond the role, a responsibility to help those who need the assistance. And so the ladies and the gentlemen who operate from Six Men's in some things that look like shacks that were transported there because somebody at some place in the country didn't want them anymore. We got to go past that. And I won't use the word war like the Honourable Member for St. Michael East, but there will be vigorous debate to make sure that that work which was started under the former Minister of Economic Affairs, the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central, that continues. We've received an artist's impression of what a developed area, a redeveloped area will look like, and we look forward to developing the area so that the vendors in that area can feel proud about the facilities that have been provided for them. People treat sometimes to facilities given the standard of the facility. It happens sometimes. It is a human thing, and we have to accept that. I mean, we try to change it, but when you're given something that it looks tacky, the feeling may be that, you know, you don't treat it as well as if it were something a little bit nicer. And we intend, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that our vendors have good facilities so that they can feel proud about the activity within which they and in which they engage. I'm also happy that the Honourable Member for St. James Central has extended to us who represent the people of this country the opportunity to identify some locations in our constituencies where vending zones can be established. And I think that, I am harping on this because as I examine the development of what we call big businesses in this country, I realize that they did not start where they are now. I, while president of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, commissioned the publication of a book on the history of tourism in this country and understood how we moved from inns and taverns and beer houses and guest houses to some of the larger edifices that we now have as tourism accommodation product. I also remember, while working on this course, remembering that in the location where Sugar Bay is now, that is where I worked for a number of years, that was a house, and part of it was a swamp. I remember the history. Cave Shepherd burnt the rubble, including old bicycles by persons who were actually seeing it, were put into that place in the late 1960s. And now on that property, you have 150 rooms. Our development, or transfer of land, or vesting of land must have strategic intent. We must start understanding where we intend to go. Our intention, as far as I'm concerned, is to make sure that our people who now feel like they are confined to either micro or small businesses, our people must understand that their future can be medium-sized businesses, large businesses, or a network of small businesses if that is what they desire. But they must understand that when we come to this place, when we come to debate resolutions and enact legislation, we come in their name, and we come to put into effect, into legal effect, structures that will move them from where they are to where they are dreaming of going. And within that context, Mr. Speaker, I support this resolution and support the move of government to make sure that all economic activity in this country is valued, is facilitated, and is allowed to grow. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I move to wrap up this debate, first let me thank all those honourable members who spoke, both the member for St. Michael East and the member for St. Peter. And first, let me address the matters raised by the member for St. Michael East. Very clearly to state, and I do remember the Highgate Hall discussions. It takes me back to when he was in fact in estimates of in the previous session, when he brought it to the attention of the Ministry of Housing that land in fact was there and had been acquired when the then David Thompson was alive. It was his father's or his relatives' land, and we were able to access that, and they've started building 12 units, 3 quads are on that property, are supposed to go on that property. The foundation is about, I would say about 70%. I visited it on the weekend. The foundation is about 70% complete, and I have no doubt that the Minister of Housing will press on in earnest to get those 12 units completed on that one side of the land. The other side, roads were put in some time ago, and I would imagine, again, some quads would be able to be facilitated there. I would imagine another 12, so they should have 24 housing solutions on that whole stretch of land. With respect to access to land, yes, clearly we have to look at going up because we have limited amount of land space. That is obvious. But there's always a balance as to how high. The problem is when you go to what we call a high rise, then it means that you have to put in elevators because you can't expect people to walk upstairs more than four flights. Elevators mean maintenance. Elevators mean that they break down. They have problems when they break down, and then people living on the higher levels, when the elevator is out of use, cannot get up to them, and they have difficulties with that, and high rises create their own problems. I actually like what we call the mid-rise. So the mid-rise is a housing solution that goes 4 stories and no more, pretty much like what you see in Country Park Towers, there in the constituency of St. Michael West. And that means that for 4 levels, you don't need the elevator, you don't have that maintenance, and still you do a maximum utilization of the footprint of the land and changing the density utilization for what you're using the land for. So yes, it's something that we have to look at for sure. The Habitat for Humanity says that we are seeing more of urbanization. People want to be in urban areas as opposed to rural areas. The reason being, they want to be near the facilities. They want to be near the best restaurants. They want to be near a better bandwidth for internet, better electricity. So people generally gravitate to urban areas, and they anticipate that by 2050, 60% of the world's population will actually be living in urban areas as opposed to rural areas. And then, of course, you always have the balance between agriculture versus housing. And on a small island like ours of 166 square miles, I should be talking about square kilometers, as my honourable member would suggest. I just can't remember what the square kilometers is. Maybe you should tell me. I think it's 400 and something square kilometers of the island. 431 square kilometers of the country of Barbados. But with a small island like ours, it's always a delicate balance between the use of land for agriculture versus the use of land for housing. And of course, in the early days, people used to have much more, rather than the nuclear family, the extended family. And multiple people used to live in a small accommodation. Now everybody wants to have their house. And I understand that. So therefore, the greater need for housing and the push and pressure on the National Housing Corporation, and by extension, the building of houses, is important. And that's why we as a government have committed to building in our manifesto 10,000 housing solutions over the next few years. And we are committed to that, and we're looking for a pathway to be able to access that and get that done for the people of Barbados. I also want to commend the member for St. Peter who spoke as well, and he made it very clear that he grew up in a shop. I think he said that twice, and it made me think that I too grew up in a shop. I don't know if growing up in a shop is a prerequisite for wanting to come to this honourable house. But I do also remember the ambassador grew up in a shop as well, and there are many people. The former member for the city of Bridgetown grew up in a shop as well. I'm hearing that I grew up in a supermarket. I grew up in a shop, Mr. Speaker. And I know full well, and I heard the member talk about the 2-pound bag and the 4-pound bag. I know full well what it is that somebody come for 2 pounds of pigtail, and you have to put your hand in the brain and cut off the 2 pounds because it was a 3-pound piece that your hand pick out the brain. And I know full well what it was at 8 years old to be running the cash register. And at that time, a cash register didn't tell you how much change to give back. Mr. Speaker, a cash register, you had to work out how much change to give back. And if the electricity went off, you had to crank it. I know what it is to have to do that. And at 8 years old, I could take over and run my friend to the supermarket, run the shop for my parents. And by 14, my parents could travel. And I know what it is to ride on a bicycle to the bank to do the deposit for the day before takings. So I understood mathematics from then. And I think that it stood me in good stead to be able to understand the people and to develop relationships with people. And my wife often tells me that a disadvantage that my own children have had is that they were not themselves given an opportunity to experience what it is to have that interpersonal relationship with people that I was able to have and develop by growing up in a shop, as the honourable member for St. Peter said. And by extension, too, I know what it is to have seen somebody who started, my father, for the one-door shop, and then the landlord decided that they wanted back the place and have to go and move his shop to a garage next door to his mother, and then from there to a small piece of land that he was able to develop and build it all the way to a distribution company to be able to distribute to the said same property that the honourable member for St. Peter spoke about when it was Astor Hotel in the great constituency of Christchurch West. So I know full well, and I have seen the progress that people can make, starting from a one-door shop all the way to being a significant distributor throughout this country. And I know that sometimes, Mr. Speaker, I often say that people talk about education and experience and so on. Education is important, but opportunity is the greatest and most important thing. Because there are many people across Barbados, very intelligent people, but you know what? They never got the opportunity. The opportunity. And that is what government is about. I often say government is about frill. Facilitate, regulate, initiate, legislate, but also provide opportunities. And that's what this resolution is about. To give people an opportunity that otherwise they would not have had. To develop a land, to do a small business, to get a kiosk, to get an opportunity to sell something and grow a business. That is what government is really about. And what we as a government and what we as a party strive to do every single day is to give opportunities to our people. Because we have confidence that once our people are given opportunities, they can thrive and they can improve on those opportunities. And that is why we struggle every day to see what opportunities we can give and what opportunities we can offer to the people of this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I didn't intend to get so passionate, but when I heard the member of St. Peter, I had no choice because it took me down memory lane. And this resolution is an opportunity for the people of Barbados. And I am thankful for all the support that both members gave, and I would ask now that this resolution do now pass.
The question is that this resolution do now pass. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, we revert to government notices. Sorry, first reading of bills. On the supplement to order paper,
Honourable Member Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the final appropriation 2018-19 Bill 2022.
Beg to second that.
Question is that the aforementioned bill be read the first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
revert to government business. Order number 8, to move the second reading of the final appropriation bill 2018 to 2019.
Honourable Christchurch East Central.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish, with your permission, sir, beg the chamber to be able to move a cognate debate for orders number 1 and order number 2 with respect to the appropriation bills previously laid for those years, as they're all inextricably linked, sir.
The question is that order number 1 and 2 be part of a cognate debate as they're inextricably linked. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I believe that this will be a significant day in the life of this Parliament, sir, as we seek to reconcile a number of matters that we have done in this chamber already. The bills before this chamber, as you know, sir, as we've prepared every year with respect to the laying of our estimates, we've come to the Parliament, laid those appropriation bills. We have equally, sir, come here and settle all of our resolutions in relation to what we've done in response to COVID. I regret, sir, that throughout the last couple of years that we have not been as sharp with respect to bringing these appropriation bills here, and for that, sir, I beg the apology of honourable members. But we have done the people's business, and these just reflect our ability to come to the Parliament to say exactly what we have done in the context of the fiscal years and how they would have been impacted. And so, sir, with those very, 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 very few words, I I will beg to move, sir, that these bills be read a second time. I know we have to do them individually, but I beg to move that these bills be read a second time. So
you have to do them individually, sir.
Sorry, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time, sir.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill.
Beg to second.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
This House is in committee.
One.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
Beg to second.
The question is that clause 1 stands part. Those members in favor say aye. Aye. Those members against say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stands part. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those members against, please say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stands
Beg to
part.
second.
The question is that clause 3 stands part. Those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those honourable members against, please say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
Beg to second.
The question is, clause 4 stands part. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All honourable members against, please say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Chair, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule of the bill. Those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those honourable members against, please say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Chair, I beg to move that you know report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
Beg to second.
Somebody second? The question is that I do now report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of the bill in committee. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those members against, please say no. Think the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Question is that the aforementioned bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the final appropriation 2018-19 Act 2022.
Beg to second that.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
To Finance to move the second reading of the final appropriation bill 2019-2020.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move this bill be read a second time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that we do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill.
Beg to second.
The question is that the speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
Clause 2.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
Clause 3. Clause 3.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
Question is that clause 3 stands part. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those members against, please say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
Question is that clause 4 stands part. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those honorable members against, please say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
The schedule.
Chair, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule of the bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Number 2 now.
Those honorable members against, please say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I now report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those members against, please say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
of Committees is reporting the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the final appropriation 2019-20 at 2022.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Order number 2 in the name of the Honourable Minister of Finance to move the second reading of the final appropriation 1920-2021 Bill 2022.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself a committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stands part. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. All those members against, please say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Madam Chair, please. Sorry, Chair. I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stands part. All those members in favor, please say aye. All those members against, please say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 4 stand part.
The question is that Clause 4 stands part. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. All those members against, please say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Chair, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. All those members against, please say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. All those members against, please say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees is reporting the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now be passed and cited as the final appropriation 2020-2021 at 2022.
Wait a second.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, we've come to the end of today's sitting. I therefore beg to move the adjournment of the House until Monday, the 21st of February at 10 a.m.
Monday.
Monday.
The question is that this Honourable Chamber be adjourned until Monday, the 21st day of February at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands adjourned until Monday, the 21st day of February 2022 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.